Welcome to HorrorMoviesBlog.com. I'm Attila Uhas, and with me on the phone is indie film's #1 scream queen, Debbie Rochon. Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Attila, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good. It's
Yeah.
so great to speak to you again after all this time.
I
It's
know.
amazing.
Can you believe it's been 10 years since the Seance?
No, I can't. I can't believe it. And it's amazing that we did something that had never been done before. We were the first ones to do it.
Absolutely. And for those that aren't really familiar
Sure,
with
what
it,
we're talking about?
Yeah, I'll quickly recap it. 10 years ago, I came up with an idea of doing a internet seance and being the first person to do it, and first group of people to do it. And my logic was that, well, usually a seance, people hold hands, and I figured that if everyone is interconnected with the internet, we could get the biggest seance ever, which we initially accomplished. And I started a rumor that I was a descendant of Vlad the Impaler, and the whole thing was to try to either debunk it or verify it by holding a seance and calling Vlad the Impaler.
Mm-hmm.
So we hooked up. My company hooked up with Debbie and her company at the time, and we produced the world's first internet seance. And boy, it was a trip.
It was a trip. It was unbelievable. I mean, you didn't think it would work, did you? I mean, or was there? I should maybe say, was there a part of you that thought it might not work?
Yeah, of course. And then, and boy, it was so funny when we actually commenced it. And then when I fell to the floor, I was actually drenched in sweat. And Tim, who was with us at the time, was like, "Hey, is this thing really working?"
I know he was surprised too. Although he's always up for anything. And Tim Reed, of course, he brought me into that company, which was IATA, and it was not the first internet radio, but it was one of the first because it was a big scale company. It wasn't like the great indie stuff we could do now on our own. You pretty much had to have a big, corporate company creating your internet radio broadcast. And so we were at IATA. It was just the three of us plus our board op. And Tim was sort of like, hey, let's see how this goes, and I'm open to nothing happening or something happening. And I said, I don't know that I believe or don't believe. And it's so funny, Attila, because I had such a transformation that night, seeing something so real happen, and it completely changed my way of thinking. I thought it's possible. I wasn't a doubter, but I think Tim was more of a doubter than I was that night. But afterwards, we were both, at least we could agree on something very major happened, and then from there you can make your own decisions what that was.
Absolutely. And I just know that I would probably never do it again.
No, I would never play around with that again. That's the thing. I mean, it was funny, a couple of months ago I was doing like it was sort of a documentary, sort of a special that you would see on TV about ghosts. We were sort of ghost hunting and talking about the ghosts in Tennessee. And I heard a disembodied voice, and that changed my life in the sense that it's very different when it really, really, really happens for real, and you know it and you experience it. That's what happened at this seance on the radio show that we were all doing. Tim started up the film show, and then I joined as a co-host, and then you came on and we did this event. And although we were holding hands, I think it was, even though listeners were definitely limited at that time, I really think it was a lot of people pouring their energy in, and, whether we got, Vlad or just somebody who was, on the other side and was bored. I mean, who knows what the reality was, but it
right.
seemed to definitely catch somebody, and it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, we did instruct our listening audience to place their hands on the keyboard, and we kind of used the connectivity of the internet to carry that kind of energy and thought process as the people do when they are holding hands. So there may have been something to that.
Yes, there really may have, and I think it's the sheer belief in it that sends a lot of the energy, and it was a good idea to have everybody place their hands on the keyboards. That was awesome because we were connected, you know. A lot of people doing the same thing, and that was an experience, I'll tell you. That was the highlight of the whole show's run. I thought it might have been when we had on the directors from Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but indeed I think the Seance with you, Attila, was definitely the highlight of that show.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it makes me think of I'm a huge fan of the TV series The Odd Couple, and there's one episode called The Exorcist, and Victor Bruno tells Felix Unger the line, We have a saying in the old spirit game, what you don't know could hurt you real bad. and I know I had a string of bad luck from that moment on. After I walked out of that building, I had probably 2 years of just bad luck. It started out with me walking out of the building and being Halloween weekend. I turned around the corner and some guy jumps out and yells to scare the hell out of me, and he was wearing a Dracula costume.
Are you serious? Oh my God!
Absolutely serious. I said, "Oh man!" And I had the shakes, I had the chills, and I just drove home. And then it was just one bad thing after another. And I said, "Oh boy, I am not tampering with this stuff ever again."
Not playing with that. I know. And in New York, it doesn't even have to be Halloween for someone to be dressed as Dracula, and for that to scare you, there was something else going on there. You know, it was definitely powerful. I remember not long after that at all. I can't remember if it was a couple of weeks or the following month, but I'll tell you something. It was very soon after that seance. I was walking home from IATA, and I was hit by a taxi.
Oh, no.
Like, crossing the street. And, I mean, I was fine. I had a lot of pain for a couple of years. But, you know, it was like a hit and run. It was a taxi cab. And it was like walking home from doing that show. So, and I know that Tim, you know, had gone through a lot of different things, you know, himself. He would have to be on to tell you exactly what they were. I can't remember, but he went through some very difficult times as well.
Wow.
And it was
and the company I worked for, who I sold my site to at the time, like 6 months later, they went bankrupt and went under.
And so did IATA.
Yeah. Oh man, what
IATA
did we do?
went under too. It's like, what? It is very. You got to look at these things and say. But then I must have done something good because maybe a year after we did the seance, then I started getting a lot of, you know, very positive things happen. I mean, I still had the strange things happen, you know, like I had my fingers cut off, but that was during a shoot, and it was the neglect of the filmmakers. But, you know, there are strange things sprinkled. You know, I had a brain tumor removed. It was not malignant, though. I mean, like, the very strange things, I would say, and, you know, maybe it's a little bit of repercussions from trying to, you know, F around with Vlad. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. It's possible. But I know that afterwards it was a weird time for the three of us.
Absolutely was. It certainly was a treat. I can't believe it's been 10 years, and it's great reminiscing with you about it right now.
It is. It's 10 years. It's so funny. I mean, it seems years are funny because it seems like it could be 5.
Yeah.
But 10 seems like a long time. I guess it is a long time.
Yeah.
And we're still doing what we're doing. So.
Yeah.
That's great.
I have as you know, a fairly, well, it's a couple of years old now, but it's really gaining popularity. My horrormoviesblog.com site. So back in the web genre game. Yeah, thank you. So speaking of, I guess, seances, I was thinking maybe we could just chat about a couple of movies that maybe had some seance scenes that you like and that I like. Any film in particular pop into your head?
Well, you know, there is a lot, and I should probably mention, and, you know, as much as this sounds like a self-serving thing, it's really not, because it just came to me when you were saying that. You know, when we're shooting The Good Sisters, we were using, you know, spells and, you know, various things that we're doing as witches in the movie that were literally very real, like from the textbook. And all of the names, every single one of the names in that movie was taken from the Salem witch trials. And, you know, the spells were real, that we would just change words, like, you know, as opposed to wishing somebody to death, we would, you know, we were just careful because April, who actually studies this stuff, was, you know, smart enough to be able to switch the spells around a certain amount, but for the most part, they were all actual spells. And, you know, that's, again, we were, you know, fooling around, if you will, with the other side, but we were careful enough to, you know, make it a positive a positive outcome if they were to come to fruition. So that was a pretty amazing experience, because we really were, and you could feel the energy when something's really happening versus when you're faking it, you know, which you have to do in movies, but, you know, there's definitely a energy there when something's really happening, and that's what happened in that movie. As far as seances in films, boy, I mean, well, there's always the classic people trying to contact Harry Houdini.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, there's a few films that as soon as you do a bio on that man, you know, there'll always be a seance segment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do recall seeing, like you said, there were several versions, and they all always, that was his wish, actually, was for once he was departed, for his widow to try to make contact, and he did say to her that he would contact her some way or another. But,
right, and that's fascinating. I've read a lot about him, but I'm not an expert, so
yeah,
I would
neither
say,
am I.
yeah, I would say it's fascinating that, you know, he would make such an effort, and you know that he would have, or he will, or he does, or, you know, who knows what time is on the other side. It could be, you know, all time is right now. But, you know, he never made contact. Now, I don't know. Some people could say, well, there you go. There's proof that it doesn't exist. But then again, I don't know. It's such a conundrum, really, because
Really,
you know,
yeah.
I have witnessed things that are very, very real that exist from the other side, and there's no question in my mind. Yet it is an interesting point that Harry Houdini, who would have been so obsessed with you know, really proving it, that to the best of my knowledge was not able to.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. That's a very interesting case. Seance movies, it's interesting, in the 70s, before we got, I mean, I know Chainsaw was made in the 70s certainly, but before we got into a lot of the gore pictures, there was a lot of, you know, very atmospheric, moody films.
Oh, sure.
You know,
sure.
and they a lot of times had to do with ESP and seances. So I think like a lot of the genre films from the 70s, there's a lot of seance stuff, you know, going on. From movies of that era, like Seance on a Wet Afternoon is a very sort of rare movie, but a cool one. And you know, I guess it sort of depends on like how you want to depict a seance, like we did with people in a circle, or you can always incorporate the Ouija board.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, the Ouija board, you know, I think of like The Exorcist, and then when you think of the circle with the regular, the typical type of seance, you have the recent Drag Me to Hell.
Yes,
had
exactly.
a real intense seance scene.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And there's I love a good seance scene.
Yeah.
And what am I mistaken? It's been a lot of years since I've seen Rosemary's Baby. Was there sort of a seance scene in that?
I don't think so. No,
I don't think so, no.
But there was definitely, obviously, the witches' gatherings and those ceremonies.
Right.
But an actual seance, no. But they did call up Lucifer so he could have his way with Rosemary to create his heir.
Right. Yeah, it's been too many years since I've seen that. I ought to see that again.
Yeah,
that's
a
great
wonderful film. Talk about atmospheric. That is chilling.
There's so many that are like that are the pre-gore movies.
Oh yeah, I mean you go back, way back. Let's say, you know, actually one of my favorites, and you may find this weird, is in the 40s. Abbott and Costello